So for those that don't know, in October of 2023, the Scout Sniper community was pretty much disbanded. Schoolhouses were shut down, so essentially they couldn't produce any more 0317 or Scout Sniper MOSs, and the Scout Sniper platoons and the infantry battalions were all essentially disbanded. And that is completely separate from Recon snipers or MARSOC snipers. This is specifically the infantry organic asset of the Scout Sniper platoon, which again, there's just different levels to being a sniper that is not really understood in I guess today's world, right? And that's one thing I love about I guess my platform is just being able to talk about the myths of and the reality of being a sniper, right? That are completely separate from what Hollywood kind of glamorizes and what most people know or think they know about, being a sniper, right? Just because somebody, runs a precision rifle, it doesn't mean that they're a sniper first and foremost, but B, that they know anything about, what snipers actually do. With all that being said, this podcast, I'm going to talk about some recent news that kind of hits home, but to hopefully just shed some light on, talking to those young Marines that are affected by this new change, right? And so hopefully, as well as you give, my average listeners, because I realize most of my audience is probably not a sniper, but hopefully you're able to kind of see the underlying message of what I'm trying to get across to these young Marines, if they even listen to my podcast. So yeah, with all that being said, if you're new to my podcast, welcome. My name is Phillip Velayo. I am a former Marine Corps Scout Sniper turned professional competitive shooter and long range creative / storyteller. I love everything about precision long range shooting. I love teaching people about it. I love crafting visuals to tell the story of long range shooting. If you're again new to my YouTube platform, cruise around. I've got a Tika vlog that I take a budget rifle out of the box and I run it through its paces and take you along that journey. If you struggle with some fundamentals or techniques of how to draw a rifle, I've got videos on that. If you want to get into competitive shooting, I've got a lot of vlogs with behind the scenes of how I prep for one and how I shoot one. And this podcast is a way for me to just get all these thoughts and emotions out of my head, because at the end of the day, I'm a human just like everyone else. And, I feel like this is a way I can use my platform to help process some of these things that are going on in my head, but hopefully help you guys along your journey of wherever you're at, either in life or, behind a precision rifle. I'm very passionate about being a dad, very passionate about being a significant other. Family is very strong rooted into my DNA. And, that's something that I love to talk about. So those are some of the things that you can look forward to when listening to my podcast. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. I appreciate you. If you're on a long drive for work or getting ready to go to a match, safe travels. I hope you make it there with no complications. And if you're in the reloading room trying to kill time, I hope that you've perfected that bullet so that it makes your destination, whether you're shooting at steel or an animal on your next hunt. So yeah, welcome to, I believe this is now episode 8. One of the things that I wanted to do before I start bringing on guests was make a commitment to do at least 10 episodes by myself to, number one, show that I was able to do it. 2, show that I was consistent enough to do it. Right. That's one of the things I was struggling with before, is consistency with regard to my YouTube channel and podcast. But 3, just be able to just, stand up the podcast on its own 2 legs. And also, when I'm thinking about bringing other guests, wanted to make sure that it's keeping up the same level of quality, right? I just don't want to jump on a Zoom call and have my guest be on, their phone or just on a regular Mac, right? I think it just ruins the complete experience of listening to a podcast. because, what I've learned about, storytelling or just like creating a video is like audio honestly takes the cake. Like visuals are okay, right? Especially if like in today's world, it's easy to get visuals, but like getting good, clean, crisp audio is like really important to just being able to watch through or listen through something. So that's one of the things I want to make sure that, my guests that I do have after episode 10 just has the equipment that they need to, again, just deliver that experience. But there are a lot of topics I do want to talk about with other people that are either precision shooting related or, again, just life related. So this podcast specifically, like I talked about, is kind of, not backpacking off my previous episode, but, I guess I'm feeling nostalgic and, I'm really like thinking about my days as a sniper, even though that no one cares, right? So I got a message from a Marine that is currently in the unit that I was at for most of my career, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines. And he sent me a picture of me and my Marines, or my platoon, the snipers that were in my platoon. We're outside the warehouse. We had just finished Urban Sniper, which was SOTG Sniper at the time, Special Operations Training Group, taught by 2 phenomenal instructors who are also snipers. And, he was asking if I wanted the picture. And I was like, yeah, why, what's up? And he's like, yeah, we're, closing out, or we're, essentially closing out the warehouse and packing everything up. And, our platoon got disbanded. And they were essentially the last sniper platoon because they just came back from deployment to essentially like get disbanded. So, there's a lot of history there that I have there. I mean, I spent my whole career as a sniper, other than my 3 years at sniper school. So my whole fleet time at 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, Camp Horno there at that warehouse. So there's a lot of memories there. There's a lot of trials, tribulations, a lot of growth that happened there in my early 20s. And, I can empathize and sympathize for the Marines that are affected by this because, I could only imagine what they're feeling. And, I don't know if they listen to my podcast or not, but I think if I had something to say to them, this is what I would want to say in this podcast. And hopefully, again, I can relate it to my general listener, and hopefully you're able to pull some underlying messages of this and relate it to your own story. But yeah, the first thing that I'll say is like, the first thing that I'll ask you is like, when you joined the cyber community, was it everything that you thought it would be? Like, because I certainly did not think what it was, and again, this is somebody that had no intentions of being a sniper, that only, maybe was a sniper in video games growing up. And, I didn't read 93 confirmed kills. I wasn't like, like a diehard fan of like the sniper series back then with Tom Berenger. Shooter had just came out, so there was kind of a little bit of emphasis of, snipers in that, which actually, that's a whole nother podcast in itself, that movie. Great movie, by the way. But, my preconceived notions of being a sniper was very minimal. So I think that's what ultimately, led to my path of like, starting from just a radio operator in a sniper team and moving my way up to Chief Scout Sniper, which Chief Scout Sniper is essentially the most senior sniper other than your platoon sergeant. You're the most senior sniper in your platoon, who in traditional, at least the way that I was utilized in my platoon, is I was completely in charge of training of my Marines to either get them ready for sniper school, but ultimately getting them ready for combat and to employ the skill sets of a sniper, from, again, the base level Marine all the way up to even my team leaders. And so, my platoon sergeant ultimately, who was obviously more senior sniper than me, guided me through the process of, really taking charge of that role. Honestly, like being a chief scout sniper was the best billet that I had in the Marine Corps, best job that I ever had, aside from being a sniper school instructor, just because of my ability to, be completely in charge of how I trained my Marines for those 2 years, for our workup, and then even post, even during our deployment cycle to Africa. And actually, over my right shoulder. So if you're watching this, over my right shoulder, where I usually have my rifle, is actually a boar spear, and that is essentially, we got that from the sniper community, adopted that kind of from the Recon community. So the Recon community had paddles. So when a Marine would leave the unit, that was, that made an impact, that, made, that was just a stud or a stellar Marine. The Marines in their unit would wrap this paddle, and they would have a paddle party and essentially say their farewell to that Recon Marine. And the sniper community adopted that. The first hog spear or boar spear that I know of was a boar spear that was made for actually Chuck Mahaney. He was the guest of honor for a Marine Corps ball for a unit, and a sniper there wanted to wrap a spear for him. And so ever since then, this was like the mid 2000s. So ever since then, it kind of, eventually trickled down to the sniper platoons, which is awesome. So I've got mine there that my platoon wrapped for me before I went to sniper school. It says Chief on it. That was my nickname for being the Chief Scout Sniper. And then I actually have one on over my left shoulder along the wall there from when I left sniper school and ultimately got out of the Marine Corps. The reality of being a sniper, right? Again, it's not all like what it's cracked up to be, right? But there are definitely a lot of valuable lessons that you can learn from your time as a sniper, right? The very first thing is the fact that you are truly the top, you were truly at that point the top 10% of the infantry, right? And so, like, own it, like, be proud of that. Don't wear it on your sleeve. Like, don't wear it when you get out of the Marine Corps or get out of service, like that you're, hot shit, because people are going to see right through that, right through you. But own it in the sense that, like, have a sense of pride with it, right? Be proud of yourself, because, again, I know what it takes to get to that level of, trying to prove yourself to, whether you took an indoctrination or, made it to a sniper platoon in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, if you made it to a sniper platoon, you probably had every prerequisite to be able to go to school, which I talked about in the last episode. So you were truly the top, 10% of the infantry. And so I know the skills that you have, or that other than obviously like shooting and technical related, right? But like, in terms of just the tenacity to study, the tenacity to excel at everything that you do, or the attention to detail in which you're doing things at, these are all skill sets that you can apply to the real world if you decide, let's say, option one, to get out of the Marine Corps, right? Like, capitalize on those skill sets that are going to separate you from your peers. Let's say if you decide to go to school or, work for a company, right? And like, oh, you were in a cyber platoon, like, obviously the people there are going to ask you questions about like your time as a sniper and stuff like that. And at that point you have two choices. You can either like, you can lie to them and try to, and try to be like, yeah, it's just like the movies, right? Or you could, show them with your actions of like, yeah, this guy was a sniper because of his attention to detail, because of his work ethic, because of his ability to accomplish the task without, being micromanaged, whatever the case is, right? Or you could be that guy that just tells all your sniper stories, right? And identify as that, because that's all that's all you essentially, you have now created your identity around that. And I know sometimes that's a hard separation, right? But I'm here to tell you that, like, at the end of the day, like, no one cares that you're a sniper, right? And use the fact that whether you became a sniper or not, or just stayed a pig, just use the fact that, like, hey, you had the opportunity to work with select individuals that hopefully also pushed you to your next level of growth, right? I know that for me, a lot of my peers that eventually got out of the Marine Corps, right? Like, they all, like, during my first 4 years, my Lance criminals, like, they all motivated me to want to be better than them. Every day was a competition to get a seat to sniper school. And then eventually, when I stayed in the Marine Corps and they got out, like, my duties changed, where, like, okay, now it's my goal to train these Marines up to to know what I know, so in the case that I go away or something happens to me, like, all of that knowledge now just doesn't die with me. And that was kind of the mindset that I had the rest of my Marine Corps career, was being able to take the information that I have and put it to good use by empowering others with that same knowledge, so that they could be successful if and when they were being forward deployed or to go overseas. And that was the reality of, like, being a sniper school instructor, right? Like, we'd have Marines. I knew that we had Marines that were still being deployed before MARSOC snipers stood up their community. Well, MARSOC is the special operations unit for the Marine Corps. And so before they stood up their cyber school, they would send us their operators to go through school, the traditional school. And, those guys would go through school. For the most part, they'd have a 90% pass rate because they were just all studs, right? Technically proficient. And you could just tell. But they would come back on check-in days when they were dropping off, their young operators to school. And they would talk, they would thank the staff, be like, hey, thanks for the skills that you taught me here, because, I was able to apply it in this X country, right? Whatever country they were at. And it's cool to hear that, right? Because it's just like, it's validation that, like, okay, hey, these guys, came to school, got a skill set, right? And were able to apply it, right? And I get it. Not everyone has that ability, right? But you also have to remember that, you want to play the cards you're dealt in the only way that you know how, which is controlling the things that you can control, right? And I say this is important. This is somebody that loved to play poker. I don't play poker anymore, but I love Texas Hold'em. Oh my God. I played it growing up in high school. I played it even in some days in the Marine Corps. I actually stopped playing it when I moved to Wyoming, but that's a whole other tangent in itself. But one of my younger Marines would always say that, like, hey, I only played the cards that I was dealt. And I love that because it's true, after my combat deployment to Fallujah, the rest of 1-4 didn't see combat. We went a bunch of MEUs, and at that point, I realized what that could do to young Marines that, especially during that time frame. This is like 2010 to 2013, so the height of global war on terrorism, right? Things were getting hot and heavy in Afghanistan. Like, a lot of these young Marines joined the Marine Corps to, go overseas and fight for their country, and they didn't have the opportunity to do so, to prove themselves in combat, right? And sometimes that's debilitating to, I think that's the right word, to Marines, especially warriors that don't have that, right? I say this to my team that my last team that I had before I became a cyber school instructor. I tell them that, as the biggest regret that I have, or the only regret that I have during my time with you, was not be able to kill bad guys with you. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I can still all text you to this day, and check in on you and make sure that you're okay. And, and that is one thing that leads into my next thing is like, cherish relationships that you have with your platoon. And when you get out, if and when you get out, make sure you stay in contact with him, whether it's a group chat, plan it around your schedule to see them, whether it's just, a full group of them, like have a mini reunion, or even just, one of the guys, right? Because, just being able to reconnect with them and like the camaraderie that you built and the relationship that you forged through the crucible of being, a sniper, and all the stuff that goes with it, all the things of, going on missions and hating your life on top of a hill for 3 days, not getting communication, whatever that is, being misemployed, all these things, all these stories that I know that you guys have, right? Like, hold on to those things and be able to, reflect back with your brothers about it and laugh about it, right? I saw this quote. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's in relation to that. It's time, like it's a chemical equation. Time, like hardship plus time equals, like I'd say, I'm gonna butcher this, but like hardship plus time, right, equals like funny or whatever, meaning that, like, after you've had like a miserable moment in your life, right? Whether that's a toxic relationship, whether it's, like one of the hardest things you've ever been on with regard to a mission, or like, just being super pissed off, or just something that just went like to shit. And then like after a period of time that, like has gone since that moment occurred, eventually you look back and you laugh at it, right? Again, I'm butchering this. I'm going to look it up and I'll remember it for next episode. But, I mean, that's real. When I talk to my guys, my peers, and even my junior Marines, we were able to laugh about some of the dumb stuff that we did, that we got into. It's funny because Zoe the other day was, she asked, she's like, "Dad, you don't talk about your Marine Corps experience that much." And again, I don't at home, like, it's every now and then she'll ask about it. But I just tell her, like some of the just the hardships that I've been to, or like if we're going to go see, a Marine that I served with, I'll tell a story about that person to her, and like how, we got into something or whatever. And, but those, it's nice to have those memories, because it definitely reminds me of the person that I was back then. And it allows me to be proud of the person that I am today because of that person back then. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. And I got this from a friend, but a good question to ask yourself, right? Because again, when something like this happens, right, where we hate, right, like obviously, like I could only imagine these Marines that, when they found out the news they were getting disbanded, they're like, F this, like they don't understand. They're like, decide to get out of the Marine Corps, and they're just like bitter the rest of their career, right? But the question to ask yourself, right, is what level of emotional value are you going to assign to a stimuli? And I love this. I wish I had this 10 years, 15 years ago, right? Because it's true. I mean, you should even ask yourself to that day, right? At the end of the day, like you're always going to get, like in life, you're always going to get dealt a bad hand, right? Like things are smooth sailing, like everything is kosher, right? And then eventually life's going to, checks and balances are going to hit you, and life's going to hit you with a hand you do not like. But at the end of the day, the only thing that you can control is your actions and your mindset to try to now pivot or take action to do something else, right? Versus like being a victim of that situation and then now pointing fingers and blaming other people for why you're in that situation in the first place. And sure, I realize sometimes that happens. Like sometimes, right? And this is one thing I'm so passionate about is like sometimes like you get a leader and that doesn't understand you and, you know, that doesn't possess the leadership qualities that you needed at that point in time in your life to navigate you through whatever journey, right? And this is one thing actually I'll move on to later in my podcast. And one of the things I'm going through school right now is leadership. And so again, very passionate about this. So, you know, at that point in your career, you did not have a leader that was equipped to guide you through whatever process that you were going through. So you said, F that guy, and you either dropped your pack, which is a term that we use in the community to just say like, oh, F it. I don't give a shit anymore. I'm just going to ride my time out of the Marine Corps and get out. Right. But you chose that action and you chose that mindset because of one person. And I get it. The Marines in your unit or the Marines of your charge dictate the experience that you have in the Marine Corps, but they don't dictate the actions that you do after the fact, right? And so that's what's important here is don't let one person or a situation affect how you conduct the rest of your life, right? Because it's ultimately going to affect you not just at that point in time, but later on in life as you navigate challenges like this. Because it's going to be not a reoccurring theme, but it's going to happen, right? And it's important to realize that, you know, it's good to start with the tools now when you're younger, to feel like, okay, hey, this is how I'm going to navigate this. This is how I'm going to push forward, versus the ladder of like, F this, I'm getting screwed over, woe is me, you know. I'm going to go out and do something else. And it's going to continue to haunt you that way. So kind of shifting gears here, right? Or actually, before I shift gears, let's talk about, you know, another option that these young Marines, if they do get out, or if they don't get out, if they stay in the Marine Corps, right? If they stay in the Marine Corps, that's great. You know, we want that. We want, you know, and I get it, and that's easier for me to say than actually doing, right? But if you decide to stay in the Marine Corps, right, you know, ask yourself like, okay, what can I do to elevate the existence of the next unit that I'm going to be a part of, right? Especially if I do have these skill sets as a sniper, or, you know, especially if you are school trained. And the Marine that I was texting, you know, I asked him like, hey, what's your plan? And he's actually going to first EOTG, which used to be SOTG. EOTG stands for Expeditionary Operations Training Group. And he's going to go teach at the sniper schoolhouse there. Phenomenal. I love that, right? Because now he's able to take the skills that he learned to give back to the community. Even though that the snipers that will be going through that advanced sniper school, or the urban sniper, however they call it nowadays, I believe it's advanced. You know, those Marines are recon snipers, they're MARSOC snipers, or they're sometimes Navy SEALs snipers that go through that course. And I know this because I still have friends that are a part of the hierarchy there. And, you know, that's great because now, you know, that if that Marine stayed in the sniper community, right, you know, he's able to inflict change or make change to, you know, systems and stuff like that, into the progression of the marksmanship program of the Marine Corps, right? Which eventually will trickle down to, again, just the regular marksmen or the precision marksmen that are attached to infantry units. I love that. Okay. But you have to own it. You have to, you have to like allow yourself to question everything, right? Question everything that you were taught. And that was actually a Marine that I look up to. He's a recon sniper. He came through my class as a senior recon Marine. Been to combat, you know, he had deployed with a rifle, and did awesome things, and he was an instructor at the recon course. Went back to the fleet, came through my schoolhouse or when it came through my class. And he was a student. And if only I can display the amount of humility that he displayed during those 12 weeks, like that is honestly my goal. And I continue to look up to him to this day, even though sometimes he says the other reverse. But he had the opportunity to teach or go to teach when the Recon Sniper Schoolhouse stood up. And he asked me, he's like, hey, I'm going to go teach at Recon Sniper. What's some advice that like you have for me embarking on this journey of being an instructor for snipers? And I think the very first thing that I told him, I was like, dude, question everything that I even taught you. Because at that time when he went through school, 2 TAC 15, I hadn't even been competing yet. So I was still just regurgitating all the things that, that I was taught, right? Or I was doing without the actual emphasis of why. And this is things before, like, bringing the rifle as medial as you can, manipulating the rear bag efficiently, recoil management practices, better recoil management practices, being able to, spot your own shots. Like, and what's funny is about this Recon Marine, he eventually graduated, obviously. But he was essentially the reason why like half the class graduated sniper school, because he eventually spotted for most of the Marines during known distance marksmanship who were struggling during the qualifications. And so, yeah, he just retired. My hat's off to that guy. Love him. If you're listening to this, thanks for being who you are to me and to our community. So, but yeah, where was I going with that? Okay, so I was going with, question everything. If you're an instructor, and then like, especially if when you become a sniper, the first thing that we tell you in your platoon is that like you should always be a student of the craft, right? And I get it when you get into an instructor role, right? Like we kind of get this hat on, and like our ego kind of gets the best of us, and like, oh, we know everything, and that's not the reality. So you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your students to always seek self-improvement and be aware that you don't know the answer to everything, right? But I think if you challenge yourself to, be a student always, that you will, eventually just allow yourself to be the best instructor that you can be to the Marines that you end up teaching. So yeah, that's option 2 for guys that stay in the Marine Corps. And yeah, so option 3 is that you get out of the Marine Corps and you join the Army if you want to continue to, carry a sniper rifle, and operate. But like, I'm here to tell you, and I'm not, so I don't have any familiarity with how like the Army sniper does their things. I know there's a lot of Marines that cross deck over to, let's say, the Army National Guard. They go to that sniper school. Those are all great guys. I've competed with those guys, and they just have a different structure of how, they're like the way that they work through the ranks of being a sniper. But at the end of the day, unless like you decide like, hey, this is all I want to do, obviously you're eventually going to get capped in terms of your rank, because that like there's no progression or growth there. And the same reality or token, if you decide to stay in the Marine Corps, of like eventually your time behind a rifle was going to run out, right? And what I mean by that is like, I think everyone, at least maybe in my generation, like had in their head that like they were going to be a Tom Berger, where they were going to be a mass sergeant, being asked to do these special missions. But like the reality is, when you're a mass sergeant in the Marine Corps, like, homeboy, you are nowhere near a sniper rifle, right? And I know that because my peers right now are mass sergeants, and they are not doing sniper things in terms of like, actually, running a gun for their primary job. Maybe they're facilitating, or they're putting together training, or they're trying to figure out a roadmap for the next precision marksmanship program. But That is not your full-time job of running a rifle. So I'm just trying to be real with you guys in terms of like the reality of like staying in the sniper community of like, there is, and honestly, like out of the 300 Marines that I talked about in the last podcast, like there's maybe only one or two. There's within one hand, I can count the Marines that actually have held a sniper billet, whether that is an instructor billet, platoon sergeant, platoon commander, throughout their whole Marine Corps career. And I will say that, that is again just a very slim chance that you would have gone there, right? And I'm going to eat my words here because, maybe a young sniper is listening to this and watch me, tell me I can't, right? Because I'd be the same exact way. But I even, like, I'll be honest with you, I had that mindset. I had that mindset that if I wanted to make a change to the sniper community, I needed to stay in long enough to do that, right? But then I saw some leaders that were great sniper ambassadors, and they were great advocates for the sniper community, but their expertise still fell on deaf words. And then I realized, like, what am I even doing? Like, if I'm going to get to that level and still like not be able to do, like, make a dent because, some general has a different agenda, like, what am I even doing with the rest of my life or career? And that was, a big reason why I decided to get out on top of wanting to reconnect with my relationship with Zoe. So super off tangent there, I know. Again, this is something that I'm just very passionate about. I think one thing that is not done enough is the mentorship of young snipers and how to navigate, toxic commands or commands that don't understand. And now that the sniper community is no longer in existence, specifically for the infantry battalions, I know that, eventually they'll come back. It's just a matter of when, right? But I definitely know that their role in overseas is going to be different, right? Because if you look at the war in Ukraine, it's drones, and it's very rare that you're going to see somebody in a ghillie suit, doing missions like what they did in Vietnam, right? It's a completely different warfare now. So, if you want to look at, what a sniper looks like in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, look at what is happening in Ukraine and everything that's coming, all the after actions that are coming out of that. So, all right, that's off my soapbox with regard to being a sniper. Hopefully you got some valuable insights if you're not a sniper, but if you are a sniper listening to this, if you're a young sniper, I feel for you. I can only imagine what you're going through. I know it's easy for me to say this because I'm no longer in the Marine Corps. But at one point I was in your shoes, and, if I were to ask my younger self how to navigate, that is what I would, this is what I would tell my younger self of how I'd navigate the next chapter of my journey or life. Because at the end of the day, I just want you to know that you should leverage the skill sets, not like sniping or shooting or field craft, but like your attention to detail, your professionalism, your like competitive edge. Leverage those skill sets into the next chapter of your life to elevate those people around you. Because again, show them with your actions that you were a sniper, based off that. So, yeah. So I think I talked about earlier, I'm going to school right now, and I've got a few months left, but this month particularly, I've got 2 classes. I typically only have 1 class, but I have 2. So the first class is film criticism, which is cool because I get to watch films and actually do, like, I get to look at look at a film through the lens of a critic. But also the second class I'm doing is leadership. And so my instructor is really focusing on this book. A lot of her teaching is around this book called The Head and Heart, The Art of Modern Leadership, and studying the author's 8 key attributes of emotional intelligence, which is curiosity, wisdom, perspective, capability, humility, self-awareness, courage, and empathy. And, a lot of these, every week I have to like sit down and write a story of like when I displayed these attributes as a leader, or if I remember a leader, displaying this to me when I was a young Marine. And it was cool to be able to sit and reflect back on the times and look at some of the leaders that shaped my leadership style today. Right. Even though right now, like I really just have like I'm just leading one person, but hopefully in the future, obviously the goal would be to lead a bigger team again. But one of the stories that I remembered was, and I completely forgot about this, right? But on my last deployment, when I was a Chief Scout, I got my unit, or my platoon commander essentially kept me and my team in Africa while the rest of the MEU was floating. And so I was in Djibouti for eventually like 3 to 4 months. And during that time, the French, I think it's the French Desert Survival Course or Combat Course. I forgot the actual name of it, but it was a French course in the desert that had slots from our unit to be able to send. So it essentially opened up to where we had 29 available slots to go jump into this course, which was, I think it was like close to a week and a half, 2 weeks long, in the desert of Africa. And I was tasked with essentially getting these 29 Marines, including officers and staff sergeants, ready for this course. And the very first thing that I'll say is that I am very grateful for that opportunity, but I'm more or less grateful for the team that I had, because at the end of the day, what I really leaned on the rest of my team at that time, which was, my ATL, my point man, everyone that was in my sniper team, and even my Raider operator, to, help shape this training schedule. Because essentially, I was taking in, other than so there were 7 of us initially from snipers. And so I was tasked with taking the other 22 from different MOSs and different units. So I didn't know what their capability was, right? And getting them ready for this, really tough class, or really tough course in the desert, and we heard that there's going to be very minimal sleep and water. There's going to be a lot of, hiking around in the desert, and it's just going to be super physically challenging and taxing. And again, I completely forgot all about this, that I even was in charge of this, until I was looking through my emails, trying to find a story for the class that I'm doing. And so, I think for me, one thing I do miss about the Marine Corps is being able to get put in those situations to, again, not just like, because I think sometimes when I hear that, or even as I'm writing the story, or even writing my story, like I feel like it's like almost like a flex of like, this is my leadership style. But I miss those opportunities to be able to make an impact on, those Marines and their lives. And that's actually one of the things that I said at Sergeant's course when I got gung-ho at Sergeant's course is, like when I have the ability to lead Marines or work with Marines, like I want to leave a good impression on them in terms of, because, obviously at that point in time, those Marines that signed up to do that class, the CCAD is the name of it, was CCAD. They knew that the NCOIC in charge of the training and that was, the chief scout sniper of the battalion landing team of the Victor unit that was assigned to that whole MU. And so I wanted to make a favorable impression for the fact that these people have an opportunity to work with snipers to see how we operate. And I wanted to show them that hey, this is why we are really good at what we do. And, me and my team, and I'm thankful for them because they helped me put together essentially a 2-week training package to get the other 22 Marines and even us ready for the crucible of the CCAD course. And, I remember there was an officer there that, kind of butted heads with me and some of the Marines there. And he wasn't an infantry officer. He was just an officer that was assigned to do the class. And I remember that was the one moment, because he had made a comment during the actual course to one of the Marines. It was a sergeant, or he was a corporal or a sergeant. And they were just not getting along. And I remember looking at the lieutenant. I was like, hey, sir. I was like, if you have any issues with the Marines, you need to come see me. And I remember, because at this point, I still I hate friction even with officers, but I think it was the first time that I was able to put my foot down with an actual officer, because it's before that, with my platoon commander, he kind of let me do whatever I want because I showed that I was capable of doing whatever I wanted. So he didn't give me much pushback. But this lieutenant, I remember putting my foot down with him. And then obviously there's that awkward moment of what the heck is going on? And, the rest of the course, he ended up not messing with that Marine anymore. And he emailed me a week after we had all graduated. And that was one of my goals, is to make sure that every one of the 29 Marines that were attending CCAD were graduating. But he emailed me afterwards. He's like, hey, Sergeant Velayo, I just want to let you know that I know things were heated in the moment, blah, blah, blah. And he essentially, professionally apologized. But he said that, you're going to make a great staff NCO one day. And I appreciated that. And, eventually when I saw him again on ship or through passing, we were able to put it behind us. But it was cool to, again, just see that level of professionalism. And I missed that, with the Marine Corps, or being able to take care of Marines. So yeah. Where am I getting at with this? A lot of you that listen to this, again, are very successful at what you do. And I say that because, I think maybe a lot of my audience are competitive shooters. And I say this, I've talked about this, that, it's pretty expensive to live the life of a competitive shooter. So if you're a competitive shooter and you're expensing this yourself, you're probably very good at your day job, and you're in some type of leadership billet. And so, my question to you is, what type of leadership style do you have? What kind of improvements that can you make in terms of, making your team in the most efficient way that you possibly can? And when's the last time that you've challenged your leadership in terms of your own actual leadership style in terms of getting out of your comfort zone? Because at that point in my career, I was completely getting out of my comfort zone of hey, I'm only used to training snipers, right? Meaning that these guys asked to be here, and at the end of the day, because I'm their team leader, they're going to do everything that I tell them. Versus the other 22, they could tell me to get fucked, excuse my language, and then there's really nothing I can do about it, right? And so my challenge was like being able to now inspire these other 22 Marines that had no idea who I was and get them ready for this very challenging, demanding course. So, yeah, what type of, what's a way to challenge yourself and your leadership style to, again, just take yourself to that next level. But that's all I got for this podcast. A little longer than I wanted to. I've got so much stuff going on, but I did want to release an episode. So, again, if you are listening to this, if you're watching this, I appreciate you. Drop a comment. Let me know. Let me know what you think about the episodes lately. If you like them, if you don't like them, again, I'm always open up for criticism because I want to make sure that I'm giving value and delivering value to you guys. That I'm not just, jumping on the mic and telling a bunch of stories from my has-been days. I really appreciate any kind of input that you guys have. I've been trying to be consistent as I can. We've got a lot of, I've got a lot of moving parts. My family's got a lot of moving parts the next couple of weeks. We've got a lot of family coming in town for the holidays, for Thanksgiving. And, especially with the baby on the way, we want to make sure that, and the reason why we're having a lot of family come for Thanksgiving is because after Thanksgiving, essentially all the rest of December, essentially it's just a waiting game for baby to come. And, we're going to keep a very low profile. Just trying to get all my ducks in a row so that when family comes, I can be as present as I can for them. And I know that if I, don't do the things that I say that I'm going to do with regard to my consistency, I know that's going to be eating me in the back of my head and I won't be present for my family. But now that this is out of the door, I can check off that bucket and be like, okay, hey, I can be present with mom, Claire, Zoe, and now even Claire's family who's coming in from Alaska, which is going to be pretty cool. But with that being said, happy Thanksgiving to everyone, because the next episode that you'll probably listen to is Black Friday or the day after Thanksgiving. And maybe I'll do a podcast talking about, something that you can send to your significant other of like some gift ideas or whatever. But I hope everyone has a safe Thanksgiving. If you're traveling to go see other loved ones, if loved ones are traveling to come see you, I hope everyone's travel is safe, that you guys are able to, do an awesome, dinner and get together. That's one thing that I love about the holiday season that I'm so accustomed to. Growing up in a big family was Thanksgiving and a big meal. If you're a fitness person, it's okay to cheat a little bit, splurge, right? But don't make it a habit. Make sure you get yourself some gym time after the fact. So anyways, hope you guys have a Thanksgiving. I know what I'm thankful for, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Until then, remember, you have control.